What's up, YouTube? This is Alvin Waldorf, and I am the homeless professional. You probably haven't seen my blog, so there it is down in the link. Click on it. You can like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, follow me on G+. I started living in my car about a year and a half ago when I realized that my mountain of debt wasn't getting any smaller. And I decided, you know what, I don't own anything. I don't even own my own car. I don't own my college degree. I've got $28,000 worth of debt, and that's not going away anytime soon. So I did something a little crazy. I moved out of my apartment and moved into my car. There are lots of challenges and things that I've faced that I've talked about in my blog and that I'll talk about here. It's been really an interesting experience, and I was able to pay off my debt in a little over a year. Now keep in mind, I'm a homeless professional, not to be confused with professionally homeless. I do have a full-time salary job, and I'm not milking the system or anything like that. I'm just a slightly crazy guy who decided that he wanted to do something extreme. Something happened yesterday, and I think I'm going to start off my first vlog with that. If anybody's been following the news, Congress decided to raise the debt ceiling. Again! This is the 5th time in the past 2.5 years. 2.5 years ago, it was 14.3 trillion. Now, it's 17.2 trillion, which is 512 billion more dollars than it was just this past fall. In comparison, the biggest company in the world, Walmart Stores Incorporated, last year, they did 465 billion. That's less than what the debt ceiling just got raised by. The gross profit of the biggest company in the world is smaller than what we just raised the government's debt ceiling by. That's craziness. Debt has gotten out of control in our society. We accept it. It's something that we live with and we're okay with. The average American has 12 credit accounts open in their name. Credit cards, rewards cards, and let's not forget about student loans and car loans as well. Those count. Americans have a lot of debt. But let's take one of the biggest forms of debt that we have in our society, a mortgage. I really irritated my sister about 6 months ago when she bought a house. She sent out a text to everybody and said, "Oh, hey, look, I just bought a house. I'm a homeowner now." And I replied with, "I hate to burst your bubble, but you're actually not a homeowner. You're a mortgage owner." Yeah, it wasn't the smartest thing to say. So that's why I didn't get a Christmas present. It's really true though. She's not a homeowner. My parents have never been homeowners. And the statistics talking about who is a homeowner isn't really true. People who own a home in this country really own a mortgage. It's actually the bank that owns their home. In the case of my car, I didn't own my car. I was making payments on my car, but the bank owned it. It's kind of like a 2-year-old grabbing something and saying, "Mine, mine." It's not really theirs. They don't own it. In fact, they're not even really paying on a loan for it. But just because we have something in our possession doesn't make it ours. A mortgage, as we all know, is a loan taken out for purchasing a house. However, you don't own the house until you've paid off that loan. A lien is a restriction on a property. That can be a financial restriction, physical restriction, like a main road cutting the lot in half. That's a lien on the house. When you have a first mortgage, you have first position lien on the house. You have that first restriction, but there's a restriction there because you don't own the property. Another term is what's called free and clear. Free and clear is when you have no financial liens on the property and you own the house outright. So what about mortgages? What's the big deal? Haven't they been around forever? Actually not. I started thinking about that today when we raised the debt ceiling. Mortgages weren't really common until about 1934 when the Federal Housing Administration started the idea to help people to become homeowners. By creating a system that allowed people to pay off their homes in smaller chunks, it allowed people to get into homes and stop renting at high prices. Back in the Great Depression, arguably, this was a good idea, but what started was a chain reaction of debt obsession in this country, in this world, in this culture. We've just become accepting of debt. It's interesting to note, however, that there are some places like Bali, Indonesia, where mortgages actually don't exist. People in the entire city own their houses, so it is possible. Something else that got me thinking about all of this was the movie It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. Who's seen that? If you haven't, you're not an American. And if you're not an American, you still need to see the movie. There's a scene in the movie where Mr. Martini, friend of Jimmy Stewart's character, moves out of his rented house and into his new house. Let's watch it real quick.
Martini! Hey, you rented a new house? Rent? You hear what he said, Mr. Bailey?
What's that?
I own the house. Me, Giuseppe Martini, I own my own house. No more we live like a pigs in this Paris field.
Isn't that weird? I mean, here's this guy who's an immigrant, and he owns his own house. He's not renting it, and people are surprised. He's so proud of it, though. He owns that house. He doesn't have a mortgage on it. He's moving out of his rented house and into a house that he now owns outright, free and clear. He's first generation in this country. Italians back in that time period were looked down upon. They were degraded. People hated the Italians and made their lives so difficult, but this man was able to do it. This reminds me of a good friend of mine who, after 2 years in this country, one as a student and then one as a full-time employee at a university, he managed to save up enough money to purchase a car outright. No one in my family has ever been able to purchase a car outright. I was astounded. I watched him write a check for $15,000 and hand it over to the dealership. And he's been one of my inspirations for this blog. So what does this have to do with anything? What does this have to do with my blog, and what does my blog have to do with any of this? I want to encourage people to help people get out of debt and stop being so accepting of it. And I want to give them simple tips that aren't just applicable to me as some weird guy who's living out of his car. Most of all, I want to help people live small so that they can dream big.